They didn't even bother asking me. When I first saw the construction crews rolling up my dirt road, I thought maybe the county was finally fixing the potholes. But then I noticed the machinery, giant cranes, cement trucks, and steel beams, rolling past my gate and into my hayfield like they owned the place. I stormed out in my boots, waving my arms, yelling for them to stop. But they didn't. They just kept working, hammering stakes into the soil, spray painting the grass, and moving in bulldozers like it was their land. And that's when I saw her. Karen. The HOA president. Standing there in her bright red blazer, sunglasses on, sipping an iced latte as she pointed at my field and told a foreman, "We'll have the first wing of the hotel done by summer." A hotel. On my farm. Without permission. I shouted so loud my voice cracked, demanding to know what in the world she was doing. She just gave me that smirk, the kind of smirk people have when they think they've outsmarted you. And said, "It's already been approved by the HOA. The thing is, my farm isn't even in the HOA. I was about to tell her that when I saw something that made my stomach drop. The ground under their bulldozers wasn't just grass, it was hiding something. Something they really shouldn't have disturbed. My pulse started pounding, and all I could think was, if they keep digging there. But before I could get a word out, one of the workers shouted, "We hit something," and everyone rushed over. It all started a year ago, back when life on the farm was quiet. My wife, Linda, and I had inherited this place from my grandfather, who raised cattle and grew soybeans here for 40 years. We'd always planned to keep it just as he left it, open fields, red barn, wooden fence, and a creek that sparkled in the morning light. The HOA was across the main road, a few miles away. We didn't bother them, and they didn't bother us. Or so I thought. Linda was the kindest person you'd ever meet. She'd wave at anyone passing by, hand out extra eggs to neighbors, and even left water out for the joggers who used the road in summer. That's probably why I didn't take her seriously when she said the HOA was showing too much interest in our land. She'd noticed cars slowing down by the fence, people pointing, even Karen herself standing across the road taking pictures. I figured they were just admiring the view. Then, about 6 months ago, we got our first letter. It wasn't addressed to us by name, it just said property owner, and claimed that our unused land could be better purposed for the community's benefit. I laughed it off. But Linda frowned. She said it sounded more like a threat than an offer. A few weeks later, Karen showed up at our door. She was all smiles, holding a binder full of concept sketches for what she called the Maplewood Luxury Resort and Spa. I remember her words clearly, "We'd love to partner with you to make this land something worthwhile." I told her the land was already worthwhile. She laughed like I'd made a joke. Then she mentioned how generous their compensation package could be, but something about the way she said it felt like she wasn't offering. It was more like she was warning me what would happen if I said no. Linda stepped in and politely asked her to leave. Karen's smile vanished. She slammed the binder shut and said, "You'll regret missing this opportunity." From then on, things got weird. Our mailbox was knocked over twice. A fence post went missing. One morning I found survey flags planted right in the middle of my alfalfa patch. No one admitted to it, but we knew. Then came the day I'll never forget. I woke up to the sound of engines. Lots of engines. When I stepped outside, I saw that convoy of construction vehicles barreling up my driveway like they'd been given the green light. And Karen, always at the front, like a queen leading her troops, was there to oversee progress. I tried blocking them at the gate, but 2 of her men unhooked it and swung it wide open without a word. I shouted, "You can't just waltz in here." Karen smirked and said, "We can. And we will. The community has voted." I yelled back, "I'm not part of your community." She just shrugged, looked at her clipboard, and waved her hand. The bulldozers roared to life. And then it happened, the foreman shouted, "We hit something." Workers crowded around the dig site. Dirt and dust swirled in the air. I pushed through the crowd, and what I saw in that hole made my heart lurch. It wasn't just rocks or old metal. It was something that had been buried for decades, maybe longer. Karen's eyes widened when she saw it, too, but instead of stopping, she smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. And then, she whispered something to the foreman that I couldn't quite hear, but whatever it was made him keep digging. I didn't know it yet, but that single decision was about to change everything. The digging got louder, faster. Clumps of dirt flew from the hole as the excavator's arm scooped deeper. I could hear the crunch of metal against something solid, followed by a strange hollow echo. It didn't sound like earth at all, it sounded like they'd hit a chamber. I yelled for them to stop again, my voice nearly breaking, but Karen raised her hand like she was a queen silencing a servant. "It's fine," she said to the workers. "Keep going. This is just part of the foundation work." But it wasn't part of any foundation. I knew what was under there. My grandfather had told me when I was young, swearing me to keep it secret. That spot, the one they were tearing into, was where an old storm shelter sat, built during the 1940s. But it wasn't just a shelter. It had been repurposed years later for something far more valuable. I tried stepping closer, but two of Karen's hired men, both wearing those reflective safety vests, blocked me. One of them said, "Sir, this is a construction site. You'll have to stand back." I clenched my fists, every muscle in me itching to shove past them, but I caught Linda's voice from the porch. She was standing there in her robe, holding her phone. I could tell by the way she gripped it that she was recording everything. Karen noticed too. She glanced at Linda, smirked, and turned back to the hole. "Make it quick," she told the foreman. "We've got a schedule to keep." Then came the sound that made every worker pause. A metallic screech, like something old and rusted being pried open. The excavator had ripped away enough earth to reveal a steel door embedded in concrete. It was weathered, dented, but still intact. Karen walked over, crouched down, and ran her fingers along the edge. Well, she said, "looks like we found ourselves a little bonus." One of the workers asked if they should call the county. Karen snapped, "No. It's on our property now. We deal with it." That was it. I stepped forward. "It's not your property. That shelter belongs to me, and you have no legal right to open it." Karen turned slowly, lowering her sunglasses just enough so I could see the smugness in her eyes. "Funny," she said, "because in about 6 months, this will all be part of our resort's lobby." Before I could answer, she waved her hand again and ordered the men to break the lock. As they worked, Linda came up beside me and whispered, "Call Sheriff Dawson. Now." I pulled out my phone, but the moment I dialed, one of the workers, big guy, tattoos up both arms, snatched it from my hand. "No phones on site," he growled. That's when my anger turned into something sharper. Fear. Because if Karen was willing to start construction on someone else's land, ignore my protests, and block me from calling the law, then she was playing a bigger game than I'd realized. The lock finally gave way with a loud clang. The foreman pulled the steel door open, and a stale, musty smell filled the air. Dust floated out in thick clouds. Karen leaned forward, peering into the darkness. "Shine a light in there," she said. The worker aimed his flashlight down the stairs, and that's when Karen's jaw dropped. She wasn't smirking anymore. Her eyes went wide, wide enough for me to know she'd found something she didn't expect. From where I stood, I could just barely make it out. Wooden crates. Dozens of them. Stacked and labeled with markings I didn't recognize, but old enough to be from another era entirely. Karen turned to the foreman. "Get them out. All of them." I stepped forward again. "Those crates are mine. And if you so much as touch them, you'll regret it." Karen didn't even look at me. She just grinned faintly and said, "We'll see about that." Linda grabbed my arm and whispered, "John, do you think those are the—" Before she could finish, there was a sudden, sharp crack from inside the shelter, followed by a low, echoing rumble. The ground beneath us trembled, dust falling from the excavator's arm. Workers started shouting, backing away from the entrance. Karen froze, her eyes darting between me and the dark hole. Then, from deep within the shelter, something moved. The movement was faint at first, just a subtle shifting in the shadows, like dust swirling. But then it became clear. Something was sliding forward, scraping against the old concrete floor. The workers stood frozen, their flashlights trembling in their hands. Karen's voice cracked for the first time since she'd arrived. What is that?" I knew exactly what it was, though my stomach still twisted at the sight. My grandfather had always told me the shelter wasn't abandoned. He'd warned me that some things were better left undisturbed. Now I understood why. A long, rusted chain slithered into view, attached to a massive wooden crate that looked like it had been padlocked from the outside. It was dragged forward by something, or someone. A pair of gloved hands, small but strong, emerged from the darkness and gripped the chain tight. The workers took a collective step back. Then a voice, low and gravelly, called out from inside. "Who opened the door?" No one answered. Karen tried to compose herself, straightening her blazer. "This is a private construction project." The voice interrupted, sharper this time. "This is private property." "Whose land is this?" Every head turned to me. I stepped forward slowly, my boots crunching on the gravel. "It's mine." "And you're trespassing." The gloved hands released the chain. Out stepped an older man, thin, wiry, wearing a faded green army jacket and a battered baseball cap. His face was lined like old leather, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. He ignored Karen completely and walked straight up to me. "You must be Samuel's grandson," he said, his voice lowering. I nodded, swallowing hard. "John." The man gave a small smile. "Your granddad told me if anyone ever tried to take this land, I was to make sure they regretted it." Karen finally found her voice again, scoffing. "Oh please, what are you going to do? Scare us with your little ghost stories?" The man turned to her, and the smile vanished. "Lady. I'm the reason this hotel will never open." He pulled something from his jacket, a rusted key attached to a chain, and held it up. "These crates aren't for you. They belong to the U.S. government." The workers started whispering nervously. One of them asked if they should call the sheriff. Another said they didn't want to be involved in federal stuff. Karen's face flushed red. "You're bluffing. This land is already under development. You have no authority here." The man tilted his head. "Don't I?" He walked back to the shelter, motioning for me to follow. Linda grabbed my hand, her grip tight, but I pulled free and went after him. Inside the shelter, the smell of dust and oil grew stronger. The crates were bigger than I thought, some marked with dates from the 1940s, others stamped with bold red letters, "Confidential." The man lowered his voice so only I could hear. "Your grandfather stored something here after the war. Documents, equipment, things people would pay millions to get their hands on. And now she's dug them up." I felt a chill run through me. "What happens if she tries to take them?" The man gave a slow, dangerous smile. "Then we let her." I frowned. "What?" Before I could ask, we heard shouting from outside. One of the workers was waving his arms, yelling that a group of black SUVs had just pulled up to the property. Dust clouds billowed as they skidded to a stop. Karen looked confused at first, then her expression turned to annoyance. "Who are these people? I didn't call security." The man beside me said nothing. He just put the key back around his neck, straightened his cap, and walked toward the light. And as the SUV doors opened, I saw the men stepping out, dark suits, sunglasses, earpieces. Karen's smirk vanished completely. The men in suits moved with the kind of precision that made everyone instantly uneasy. No wasted steps, no chatter, just a silent, purposeful stride toward the excavation site. The air felt heavier with each second they got closer. One of them, taller than the rest, pulled off his sunglasses and looked directly at Karen. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the shelter entrance." Karen crossed her arms, her voice dripping with fake authority. "Excuse me? This is an HOA-approved construction project, and you're trespassing." The tall man didn't blink. "This site is now under federal jurisdiction. Effective immediately." A ripple of panic went through the workers. Some backed away from the hole, others dropped their tools entirely. Karen laughed, but it was shaky. "Federal jurisdiction? On my development? Don't make me laugh. I have all the permits right here." Before she could finish, the man reached into his coat and produced a folder. He flipped it open just enough for her to see the contents, whatever it was, because her face went pale instantly. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Behind him, the other agents spread out, forming a loose perimeter. Two headed straight for the shelter. Linda stepped up beside me and whispered, "John, what's going on?" Before I could answer, the older man from the shelter, still wearing that battered cap, spoke to the tall agent like they knew each other. "Took you long enough." The agent nodded once. "We were waiting for confirmation." "You've got it now." Karen finally snapped out of her shock. "Wait just a minute. This is private land." The agent turned his head slowly toward her. "Exactly. And you are not the owner." He then glanced at me. "You are, sir?" I nodded. "That's right." The agent gave me a short, approving nod before turning back to his men. "Secure the site. No one leaves." Karen's voice cracked. "You can't keep me here. I'll call my lawyer." The agent didn't even look at her. "Do that. But until you're cleared, you're not going anywhere." I watched as two agents entered the shelter, carefully prying open the first crate. The smell of old wood and grease filled the air, and even from where I stood, I could see the gleam of metal inside, rows of neatly packed, well-preserved equipment that didn't look like it belonged to any farm I'd ever seen. The older man leaned toward me. "Your granddad hid these here for a reason. They were never meant to see daylight again." I frowned. "Then why let them open it?" His eyes flicked toward Karen. "Because sometimes, the fastest way to ruin someone is to let them think they're winning, right before the ground disappears under their feet." Before I could respond, one of the agents emerged from the shelter holding something small but unmistakably important. An envelope, yellowed with age, stamped with a seal I didn't recognize. He handed it to the tall agent, who opened it, scanned the contents, and then looked directly at me. "You might want to hear this," he said, his voice low. Karen stepped forward, trying to insert herself between us. "Whatever it is, I have the right." She was cut off by a loud, mechanical groan from the direction of the excavation. Everyone turned. The ground near the shelter's opening was sinking. The weight of the equipment, the digging, it had weakened the soil. A deep crack shot through the dirt, widening fast. Workers screamed and scrambled back as the earth began to cave in. Dust and debris filled the air. The shelter's entrance tilted forward, swallowing the steel door into darkness. And just before the dust consumed my view, I saw Karen standing too close to the edge, her arms flailing as the ground gave way beneath her feet. Karen's scream cut through the chaos as the ground crumbled beneath her. For a split second, her arms pinwheeled like she was trying to grab the air itself. Then she disappeared into the cloud of dust. "Hold your positions," the tall agent barked, but 2 of his men were already rushing forward with ropes and flashlights. The older man in the cap didn't move, he just watched with narrowed eyes, like he'd seen this kind of thing play out before. Linda clutched my arm, her voice trembling. "John, she might be hurt." I hesitated, the mix of adrenaline and anger making my chest feel tight. Part of me wanted to leave her down there after everything she'd done, but another part, one I couldn't ignore, remembered that my grandfather had always taught me kindness wasn't just for friends. The dust began to settle, revealing a jagged sinkhole where the shelter entrance used to be. The metal door was gone, swallowed by the earth, and somewhere down there, Karen was coughing and shouting. "I can't move," she cried. "Help me. I'm stuck." The agent secured a rope and dropped it into the hole. One of them slid down with practiced ease, disappearing into the shadows. A moment later, his voice echoed back up. "She's wedged between 2 beams. We need to move debris before we can lift her." The older man stepped closer to me. "This is your chance," he said quietly. "My chance for what?" I asked. "To show her the kind of man she'll never be," he replied. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the second rope and started lowering myself down into the pit. The agents tried to stop me, but the tall one simply nodded, letting me pass. The air grew colder as I descended, the smell of dirt and rust pressing in around me. My boots hit uneven ground, and I saw Karen pinned under a beam, her leg caught at an awkward angle. Her blazer was torn, her hair coated in dust, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked small. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice half suspicion, half disbelief. "Because leaving you here would make me just like you," I said flatly. Together, the agent and I lifted the beam, grunting under its weight. Karen yelped as we pulled her free, but she clung to my arm as soon as she was able to move. We attached her to the rope, and the agents above hoisted her out of the hole. I followed right after, my hands aching and my shirt drenched in sweat. When we emerged, Karen didn't meet my eyes. She stood off to the side as a medic checked her over, her mouth pressed into a thin line. The tall agent turned to the older man. "We've secured most of the crates. The rest will be transported tonight." Karen's head snapped up. "You can't just take them. That's valuable property." The agent cut her off. "That's classified property. And you've already interfered more than enough." She opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of heavy engines drowned her out. We all turned to see more SUVs and a pair of flatbed trucks pulling up, their beds empty but ready. The agents began loading the crates, working quickly and quietly. The older man gave me a slow nod. "Once they're gone, this land will be safe again." "But she's not going to stop. You know that, don't you?" I looked over at Karen. Even bruised, dusty, and humiliated, her eyes burned with something dangerous. "I know," I said. And that's when the agent with the folder approached me again. He handed me a sealed envelope, clean, crisp, and stamped with the same strange seal I'd seen on the old documents. "This," he said, "is everything you need to protect yourself, and to make sure she never tries something like this again." I stared at the envelope in my hands, the weight of it heavier than it looked. Karen must have noticed it too, because her expression shifted from anger to something that looked like fear. "What's in there?" she demanded. I didn't answer. But when I opened it, and my eyes scanned the first line, I realized it wasn't just a shield. It was a weapon. The first line of the document hit me like a thunderclap. "By authority of the Federal Land Protection Act, the entirety of Parcel 7A, including its historical contents, is hereby and irrevocably deeded to the Samuel Hart Family Trust in perpetuity." My hands trembled. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was ironclad proof that not only was this land mine, but the government had recognized it as untouchable. No HOA. No developer. No county rezoning could change that. And that wasn't the wildest part. The second page listed the exact nature of the items in those crates. War artifacts, experimental prototypes, and sealed government records, all tied to my grandfather's service and his agreements with the U.S. military. Their removal by the agents wasn't just a precaution, it was an active operation to prevent the materials from falling into the wrong hands. Karen must have read the shift in my expression because she stepped closer, her voice shaking. You can't hold this over me. I'll sue." I laughed. Not the small, polite laugh I usually had when dealing with her nonsense, but the kind that made her flinch. "Sue? Karen, this document means I could have you arrested for trespassing, illegal excavation, and interfering with federal property." Her jaw dropped. "That's ridiculous." I took a step forward, holding the paper just inches from her face. "And if I hand over the footage Linda's been recording for the last 2 hours? You'll be lucky if you only end up bankrupt." Linda, bless her, lifted her phone and waved it at Karen with the biggest smile. "Got your good side the whole time." The tall agent chimed in, his voice calm but cutting. "Ma'am, you are formally advised to leave the property. If you set foot here again without explicit permission from Mr. Hart, we will consider it a federal matter." The older man in the cap leaned in close to Karen. "And trust me, you don't want to be on a federal matter list." Karen's bravado cracked. Her face twisted into something between anger and humiliation. Without another word, she turned on her heel, stomped toward her luxury SUV, now caked in dust from the sinkhole, and sped off, tires spitting gravel in all directions. The agents loaded the last of the crates, their engines rumbling low as the convoy pulled away. The tall agent paused long enough to give me a firm handshake. "Your grandfather was a smart man. Protect this place." When they were gone, the older man pulled off his cap, looked out over the fields, and smiled. "Looks like the farm's in good hands." Then, without another word, he started walking down the dirt road, disappearing into the distance like a ghost fading back into history. Linda slipped her arm through mine. "You think she'll come back?" I exhaled slowly. "If she's smart, no. But Karen doesn't seem to be in the habit of learning lessons." Over the next few weeks, the sinkhole was filled, the damaged ground restored, and I put up a brand new gate, reinforced steel, keypad entry, cameras at every angle. Not to keep my neighbors out. Just her. One afternoon, as I was repairing the fence near the main road, a sleek black car slowed down. The tinted window rolled down just enough for me to see Karen's eyes. She didn't say a word, just stared at me. I smiled, tapped the brim of my hat, and held up the federal seal from the document like it was a badge. Her window rolled back up, and the car sped off. That was the last time I ever saw her near my property. But every time I walk past that patch of land where the shelter once sat, I can't help but feel like it's still watching over me, just like Grandpa planned. And if Karen ever forgets why she can't touch my farm, well, I'll be ready to remind her. Only next time, I won't need a rope.